In this part, we are going to create a website that is installable, and this is the characteristic of the progressive web app. And what is installable? At here, you can see there is a plus symbol, and when we click on this, you can see it asks you whether you want to install the app. And after you click the install, you can see the website open like an application rather than a website. And also inside the desktop, you can see the icon is located here. So you can press on this icon and open the application again. And for the iPhone and also the Android, and when you load the website, you can see on the Android, you can see there is a banner here to prompt you that you can add the My Contact to the home screen. So when you click on this, it will add to the home screen. And you can see there is an icon here. And when you click on this, it will open like a applications. And here are the same. For iPhone, you can click on the share. And then you can use add to home screen by clicking here. And also add to the home screen. Now you can see the application is here. And when you click on this, and again, this looks like an application rather than a website. Now the best part is even we turn on the offline, and then we click on the add new contact, and we type Peter, and then we type some numbers and press add. And now you see there are only 3 contacts here because we still haven't online yet. But if we turn on the network, now you can see it add immediately, and the content is Peter. We just added to the contact list. First, we go to the materializecss and download the materialize. And then we unzip the file. After we unzip the file, there are CSS and JavaScript. And then we copy the materialize minimized version. We copy this to our CSS folder. And also, we copy the JavaScript, also the minimized version, to our JavaScript folder. Now we create a simple template by using the embed, and then we link the CSS by using CSS materialize. And also we have to add a JavaScript source. And since we are going to use the material icon, so we go to the material icon and get the CDN. So we copy this and paste it to our website. And we change the title to My Contact. Then we go to the navbar. And then we copy this bunch of code and go to the body and paste it here. And since we do not need to use the tab, so we can delete the tab. And we can open with live server. And now you can see the website is like this. And since we do not want to pack it to the left and we want to make it more center, so we go to our navbar and put container. Now you can see this is much better. And then we change this to favorite and about page. So now we delete one of the list item, and then we put it favorite and also the about, and the link is pages and favorite, and this is pages and about. And this part actually is describing this part. And in order to make it work, make the menu bar pop up, we have to add the JavaScript. We go down to the bottom of the navbar. There is initialization. We copy this and go to the UI.js and paste it here. And since we do not have any options, we can delete this part. And under the body, at the end of the body, we can go to add the script and link to the UI.js. And so now when you click on this, it will pop up this menu. So now we are going to correct this to favorite and also the about. We link to the pages and favorite, and this one we link to the pages and about. And actually we should add a home here. And then we copy this and paste it to our about page and also the favorite page. And at this moment we just add a header to distinguish the page. One is about and the other is favorite. And now if you click on the menu and click on the favorite, it go to the favorite page. And if you go to click on the about, so now you can see the about page. And when you click on the home, it can go to the home page. And this is the same when you are using the desktop mode. So when you click on the favorite, it go to the favorite. And when you click on the about, it go to the about page. So the last thing is we are going to correct this logo. So instead of just a tag, we are going to add a slash. And the logo become my contact. Now we copy this and paste it to the about page and also the favorites page. So when you at the about page and click on the logo, it will go to the home page. And when you click on the favorite, you click on the logo, it also can go to the home page. In this part, we are going to create the models for inputting the new contact and also editing the contact. So first we have to copy the initializations. So we copy this and paste it here. And since we already has the elements, so we have to change the name. And we also change this to models. And then we have to init. So we paste it here. And we replace the element with signF, and also replace the elements with models. And since we do not have any options, so we can delete this. And now we can back to the index. And under the unordered list, we can copy this bunch of code and make some testing. Now we are going to edit the model. And since we do not need the footer, we can delete this div. And then we replace this with new contact, and then we open with live server. Now you can see when we click on the models button, the models will pop up, and when we click on the other area, it will be closed. And then we remove this paragraph and create a form, and there are two input fields, and we create the name is name, and the placeholder is equal to the person name. And this we are going to add the phone numbers. So the type is number and the name is phone, and the placeholder is equal to phone number. Under the input field, we create a button with the class btn, and add is the text of the button. And under the button, we create a paragraph with the class of error. If there is error, it will paste the message inside the paragraph. And then we go to the class and we add the class of add contact. Now we go to the website and take a look. And now you can see there is a form for people to enter the person name and also the phone numbers. And then we copy all of this and duplicate. And this time we are going to create a form for people to edit the contact. So in the title, we are going to replace with edit contact, and the class is edit contact, and the button is update. Now we go to the first model and we change this ID to add contact modal. Now we try to click on the modal again, and now you can see the edit contact. So this is also correct. So we go to this and we change this to the ID with edit contact modal. And at last, we back to the unordered list. And under the unordered list, we create the div with container. And inside this, we create the unordered list with class of contacts, collections, and also with header. And this you can find inside the materializecss documentations. And we just have one list item with collection header and the H4 header. We type contacts. We will not put other list item inside here because we will put it inside here by program later with using the Firebase. So at last, we can delete this modal button because later we will trigger the modal by clicking the icons of the list item. So now we back to our page and delete this modal trigger. In this part, we are going to add the floating action buttons to our website. So first, we are going to copy this bunch of code and then back to our coding. And at the end of the body, we paste the floating action buttons. And since we do not need the unordered list, because the unordered list is like this, and because we just need this button, so we can delete this unordered list. And like other components, we also need to initialize. So we have to copy this and go to our UI.js and we paste it here. So we change the name to floating action buttons. And then we also change this to FAB. And we delete the options. So now you can see there is a floating action button at the corner. In this part, we are going to create the app icon. And first we go to this website, Android Access Studio, and click on the launcher icon generator. And then we go to search about the contact. And we think this is suitable. So we click on this. And then we choose the color of white. And then we choose the background color as red. And then we also make some shadow. And at last, we are going to download this icon. Now, after we unzip the file, we can go to the app icon generator. And then we copy and paste to the website. And now we just need to generate the Android icons. So we click on the generate. Now inside this folder, you can see there are different sizes of the icons. So we search this icon. And then we paste to the outside folders. And then from the info, you can see the dimension is 192, so we change this to 192. So we can know the size when we are going to coding. So this is icon 72. So we continue to the others. And then we go to create the folders of image. And then inside here, we also create the icons. And at last, we drag all these icons to the folder. So now you see these icons is inside our project. In this part, we are going to add the manifest file to our progressive web app. So inside here, in the root folders, we create a new file called manifest.json. And what is manifest? Inside this website, it already described that the manifest is to tell the browsers about your progressive web app, about how to behave when installed on the desktop or mobile device. The manifest file should be included app names, icons, and also the URL. So here is a sample file, and we copy this one, and then we paste to our JSON file. And since we should not have the same name as the sample file, so we change this to my contact. This is the short name, so this should be my contact. And the name is my contact. And we do not have any descriptions. And also the start URL should be this index.html file. So this is index.html. And the background color, we use this as background color, so we use the color picker, and then we get this code, and then we paste here. And the theme color, we usually use a darker one, so we copy this and paste this here. Now actually, we can see the background color is this one. This is the finished app that when we open, it has a splash screen. And this is the background color. And the theme color actually is this top bar. And also the icon. And we have to change this icon later. And we do not have any shortcut, so we can delete this away. And we also can delete this scope. This page standalone, which means it opens like an app without a browser address bar. So now we are going to add the icon, and we can close this. Now we have 5 different sizes. So first we are going to change the path, and then we also delete this one, and then we paste it 4 times. Have to go to the top and link to our manifest. So we link, and then this is manifest, and then this is manifest.json. Now we copy this and go to each page. On the top, we link this manifest. At last, we save all, and if we go to our developer tools, and then go to the applications, now you see there are theme colors, background colors, and there are something wrong here. This is because we add the S here, but actually the icon file do not have the S. So we delete all the S. And also we have forgot to add the folders in between. So we need to add back the icons. Now we save it, and back to our manifest. You can see it already display the icons and also the theme colors and other details. In this part, we are going to open the website inside our Android simulator. To open the simulator, we can open the Android Studio. And then we go to the tools, and then there is AVD managers, and then we can choose our models and click play, and then you will get these Android simulators. And if you do not have any phone models yet, you can click on create virtual device, and then choose the models, and then click next, and then click next, and then click finish, and it will build the models here. Now we go back to our Android simulators, and then we open the Chrome, and if we copy this address and then paste it here, now you can see this site can't be reached, and this is because this is just the local host of the simulators, but not referring to that website. So in order to get access to the website, we can type http 10.0.2.2, and then we copy these port numbers, which is 5500, and now you can access the web page. And you can also, by clicking the three dots and click add to home screen, click add, and add automatically. Now inside the home page of the simulator, you can see the icons here. You can also see the Chrome icon here, but we can ignore this at this moment. After we finish all the process and we really created the progressive web app, this icon will disappear. To open the iOS simulators, we just need to open the Xcode, and then we go to the Xcode and open developer tools, and there is a simulators. If you click on this, the simulator will open. So now the simulator is opened, and we just need to copy the address of the website and then paste here. Now you can see the website is already opened. And then if we go to click on share buttons and try to add to home screen, and now you can see the icon is a little bit weird because this is not the icon that we expect. This is just the screen capture of the whole web page. So in order to fix this, we have to go back to our coding. And at here, we are going to add Apple Touch icon. So we have to add the link. And then here, this change to Apple Touch icon, and the ref is image, and then icons, and then we choose 96. We can add more image for different size, but at here we just add one, and then under here we go to add the method, and then name is equal to Apple mobile web app status bar, and then the content is the color. We go back to our manifest and we copy this color, this darker red, and go back to our index and paste it here, and the content is equal to this color. Now we copy this two line and then paste on every page, including the about page. Now we click save all. Now if we click share and then press to the add to home screen and then click add, now we have the icons displayed in our home screen, and when we click on this, it will open just like an mobile apps, and as you can see, the icons is much better rather than just a screen cap. A service worker is a script that executes in the background in a separate thread from the browser UI. The service worker cache makes it possible for a website to function offline, and this enabled the function like caching, push notifications, and background sync. They can't access the DOM, but they can intercept all the network requests, and they act as a programmable network proxy. So this allows the developers have the opportunity to control how the request handled, and this makes the website can work offline. Every service worker goes through these 3 steps in its life cycle: registrations, installations, and also activations. To install a service worker, you need to register it in your main JavaScript code, and then it will tell the browser where your and this registration will tell the browser where your service worker is, and then start installing it in the background. In this part, we are going to do the registration of the service worker. To do the registrations, we are going to create a app.js, and inside the app.js, we are going to check whether it supports the service worker. So we type if service worker in navigator. If it supports the service worker, we will register the service worker, and then we console.log the service worker is registered, and then we catch the error. Now we go to the index, and then at the bottom we add the script which link to our app.js, and then we also link this to our about page and also the favorites page. And then at the root folder, we have to create the service worker. So we create the stub.json. Now we go to the page again. You see the service worker registered, and now you can see the scope is this localhost, and which means it can see all the files under the root folders. To install the service worker, we have to go to the serviceworker.js, stub.js, and then we type self, which means the service worker dot add event listeners, and then we type install, and then this will have an event, and then we console.log the service worker is installed. Now, if you look at the website, you can see inside the console there is service worker registered and service worker is installed. However, if we refresh, we just see service worker registers, because as we have said before, if there is no new service worker, since it already installed, it will not install again, so we cannot see the service worker is installed. However, if we go to the service worker and then make some changes, and then go to the website again, you can see the service worker is installed. However, we go to the applications and go to the service worker, you can see the new service worker is still waiting to activate. As we can see inside this animation that we already showed before, the new service worker will not take over until the existing service worker is removed by closing the browser or closing all the tabs. To make the new service worker take over, we can also click on the skip waiting, so the new service worker will take over the old service worker. And at last, what is the use of adding the installation process here? So this is to tell the progressive web app that this is the time to add all the assets that we usually use, like the CSS, some JavaScript, or the icons that we must use when open the app will be added at this time. To activate the service worker, we add another piece of code, which is self.add-event-listener, and then activate, and then console.log the service worker is activated. Now, if we go to the website, you can see the service worker is installed and the service worker is activated. You must see installed and then activate, but the register sometimes is on the top and sometimes is very random. And then if we refresh, you can just see the Serviceworker register, and we cannot see the installation and activation because there is nothing changed inside the Serviceworker. So there's no need to installation, so there's no need to activate again. But if we go to the Serviceworker and make some changes, for example, type some words here and then save. Now if you go to the console and you can see the Serviceworker is installed but without activation, we can refer to this animation again. And once the new Serviceworker is installed, the new workers will wait until the existing worker is controlling the zero client. So it needs to wait after the browser close, or you can do in these two ways. One is you can use skip waiting and then press here. Now you can see the Serviceworker is activated. And in the other one is you take this update on reload. So if we try to delete this word again and then save, now you can see the Serviceworker is installed and activate again, and then it reload. So this also do the same effect. In this part, we go to the lighthouse to validate the aspect of the progressive web app. To go to the lighthouse, we have to go to the three dots and go to More Tools, go to Developer Tools, and then we can tap on the lighthouse. And then we just take the progressive web app, and then we click on Generate Report. And then in this part, we just focus on these field problems. The first one is the manifest do not have a PNG icon of at least 512 pixels. And actually, when we generate the icons with Android Access Studio, there are two PNG files. One is 1024 times 1024, and the other is 512 pixels. So we can copy these two to our project. We put it inside our icons folders, and then we back to our manifest. And now we duplicate these two objects. And then we know the Firestore is 512. So we change this to Firestore.png, and this is 512 times 512, and this is App Store, and then this is 1024 times 1024. So we fix these problems. If we clear this and then generate the report again, now you can see it already turned green, so we can fix the other problems. Is we haven't set a theme colors. So what is the theme color? The theme color actually is the color of the address bar. So if we set the theme color, you will see this color appear inside the address bar when you open it inside the mobile. So we back to our coding and we go to the index, and on the top of the title, we give a meta tag, and the name is theme color, and the content is the color code. And so we can copy from the manifest because we also have the color of the background color. We can use the same and paste it to our content, and then we copy and paste to each of the HTML file. Now we can generate the report again. Now you see the set theme color also turns green. And at last, the manifest doesn't have a maskable icon. And this we can skip this first because later we will deploy it to the web, or we will use localhost. So we can ignore these problems because the service workers work on HTTPS and also localhost. So back to the maskable icon, and we can click on Learn More. You can see to add a maskable icon, we have to go to the manifest and choose one of the icons and add the purpose, any maskable. And it also mentioned maskable icon is a new icon format that ensures that your progressive web app look great on all Android devices. So now we follow this instruction and back to our project and go to the manifest. And maybe we also choose a similar size, and then we paste the purpose of any maskable and we save all. So we generate the report again. Now you can see all the problems are fixed. A fetch event will be emitted when the HTML pages load assets like the JavaScript and CSS or the images, or manually send a fetch request. The service worker stores the asset for the future, and when offline, the service worker can intercept the fetches and look for the resources in the cache. And this is good for both when the app is online or offline. To listen to the fetch event, we go to the service worker, and then we add self.add event listener, and then fetch, and then we log the event here, and the event has the information of that fetch request. And now at here you can see there are many different fetch events, and when you look at the target and the request, you can see, for example, this is loading the UI.js, and this one is also using the get method to loading the icon. So this is how to listen the fetch event. In order to make the app installable, there are a few criteria, and we also fulfill these criteria. We have created the web app manifest that has the short name, icon, and start URL, and also the display. And we also register a service worker with a functional fetch handler, so it should be installable. And what is installable? Example indicators include an install button on the address bar at here for the desktop, and also there is a install bar at the bottom for the mobile phone. We open the Android simulator by using the Android Studio and go to the Tools AVD Managers, and then we click on the play buttons. And in the previous lecture, we already showed that we can use this IP address to get the local host of the computers. However, this is the local host of the computer, not the local host of the phone. So this will not pop up the installation bar. So we have to use the port forwarding in order to access the local host of the phone. So we need to go to the Google Chrome. We type Chrome inspect, and then we can click on port forwarding. And for example, since our port is 5500, so we can type localhost 5500, and we also, for convenience, we use the same numbers and then click done. And then now we can go to here and type localhost 5500 and then click open. Now you can see it already start opening the website. And now as you can see, it already pop up the add my contact to the home screen. So when you click on this and click add, now you can see the icon already displayed inside the mobile phone. Catching the core assets that make the user interface, such as this index page, the CSS files, and the JavaScript. So even if there is no connection, we can still open the apps rather than the default Google Chrome's fallback page with the word no internet. And so the best place to catch the core asset is at the installation process of the Serviceworker. So we just need to add the catch once rather than constantly catching the core asset. So we go to the install process and we delete the console.log. And then we use catches.open, and then this create a catch file if you do not have one. So we create a name. This is static catch, and the name is static catch. And then this is a promise, so we use .then, and then the catch, and then we use catch.add all the assets, and then we use constant assets, and we add all the request path here, and this will pre-catch all these files. Now we add all the request path first, and we also add this link here. And since adding all these files to the catches needs more time than this installation process, so we have to use wait until in order to prevent the Serviceworker already stop before finish catching. So we use e.wait until, and we see there is a request fail, and at last we can see there is some mistake here. Actually, we do not have any styles.css. Instead, we have the materialize.css. So we copy this name and we paste it here. Now we can see the error is gone, and when we go to the applications and we go to the static catch, and we can see all these request URL and also the content. And why we have to use the slash and also slash index.html? Because some of the people, or most of the people, actually they will just use the slash instead of the slash index.html. But we also have to deal with the request URL, which is index.html, because the Serviceworker will base on this request URL and put back the corresponding content to the website. In the previous lecture, we already catch all the core assets inside the Serviceworker. And what we are going to do now is, when the app is offline, we have to get the corresponding content to our web. So what we have to do is to get the corresponding content during listening the fetch event. So this is the time that the app intercepts the fetch event. So we have to do is e.respond with, and then catches dot match e.request dot then. So this is to see whether there is match with the fetch request. If there is a fetch request match with the catches here, then we will return the catch response. And there may not have the content inside our catch, so if there is the case, we have to let the app to continue to fetch the request. So now at here, when you look at the web page and click on the network tab, you already can see some of the file is from the Serviceworker rather from the remote server. So we can try to click on the offline mode and then refresh. Now you can see the web still. Now you can see the web still looks good rather than the internet connection error page exists here. And as you can see, there is error when fetching the UI.js. And now at here, you can see we forget to add the UI.js as the catch. So we have to add the JS and then UI.js. And now we have to turn on the network again. and refresh. Now if you go to the applications and go to the cache, now you see the UI.js. So now we can turn off the network and press skip waiting and then refresh again. Now when you click on the hamburger menu, you can see it still works. In the previous lecture, we already cached all the core assets to the Serviceworker. So when we turn these to offline and refresh the page, you can see it still works very fine. But the problem is, if we go to the favorite page or the about page, you will see there is error that the site can't be reached. This is because we haven't cached this page. But the problem is we cannot catch all the pages when first installations, and this not make sense to catch all the pages of the website. So what we are going to do is to create a dynamic catch. So we back to the Serviceworker and go to the fetch event. And what we are going to do is, if there is no asset in the static catch, then we will go to find it inside our dynamic catch. So on the top of the page, we are going to add the dynamic catch by creating a variable called dynamic catch. And then at the bottom, we will go to fetch the request. If there is no asset, the required assets can't be found, such as the about page, then we will go to .then. And then we are going to distinguish between the static and the dynamic. So we are going to rename this. And then this one is the fetch response. And then again, we will just like on the top, we are going to open a new catch. So we use the catches dot open dynamic catch dot then. And then the catch, and there is some difference between this one and on the top, because we use add all is because we haven't go to get any files from the remote server, so we need to use add all. However, because we already execute the fetch function here, so we do not need to go to fetch again, so we should not use the add all. So we use the catch dot put, and then we use the event.request.url, and then we can put the dynamic response here. However, if we put the response here, then there will be nothing returned to the applications. So we have to use the .clone and then return the dynamic response here. And now if we go to turn on the network, and then we just go to the about page, and then we are going to check inside the applications, and you can see there is dynamic catch and there is about page here. So if we go to turn off the network, and then we go to the index page again, now this works fine. And then we go to the about page, and we can also see the about page here. But if we go to the favorite page, you can see the site can't be reached. And this is because we haven't cached it. We haven't gone to this page here, so there's no cache about this page. And so this is how the dynamic catch works. Now instead of showing this site can't be reached, we want to have a fallback page such that it looks like an app rather than a broken web. So we have to go to create a fallback page. And so inside here, we are going to duplicate the about page. And then we rename this as fallback. And then inside the fallback page, we are going to change this to sorry, there is no connections. And then we are going to use a div to surround the headers and also the paragraph. And then we make a button to go back to the home page. So now we can go to the Serviceworker, and then at here we add the pages, and then fallback.html. We want to catch this as the core asset. So now we back to our pages, and then we turn on the connections, and we go to the index page again. So now if we back to the cache and go to the static cache, now it already stored the fallback page, and we can see on the dynamic cache it already go to the about page in the previous lecture. So now we turn off the connections, and then we go to the favorites page, and this doesn't work because we haven't added the catch error inside the fetch listener. So after .then we have to use .catch, and then catches .match, and then we find the pages and get the fallback.html. Now we try to go to the home page again. Now we back to online and also clear the storage. And then we also unregister the Serviceworker, and then we refresh the page. Now the Serviceworker installed, and when we go to the cache, it just have the static cache. So now we turn to offline, and then we try to go to the about page. Now you can see there's a page that there's no connections, and then we back to the home page. And then if we just go to the about page, so now it should stored inside the dynamic cache, and then we back to offline, and then we back to the home, it still works. And then we go to the about page, since we already have been here before, so it also works. And if we go to the favorite page that we haven't been there before, it will go to the fallback page. So now it's all work, and at last we just want to make some changes on the about page, because I think it should be better to add a container and put the about inside the div. And then we also put the center. And since we already have the cache, so we should clear the site data, and then back to the online, and then refresh. And then we also do the same on the fallback page and put the center here. So we go to offline, and then we go to favorite page. Now you see the fallback page will center all the stuff at the center. Before, we already created the app such that it can store the dynamic cache. So at here you can see there are dynamic cache here, but if the web page has many pages and the users has clicked more and more pages, this will become a lot of caches stay here, and the size of the app will become very big. So there is a function is needed to reduce the size of the cache. So in here we back to our Serviceworker, and here we are going to create a function to limit the number of cache. So we use constant limit num cache. Then we pass the cache name, and also the num, and then we use caches.open. Actually this is the same as here. We can copy this, and instead of open static cache, we open the cache name, And then instead of add all, we are using to get the catch.keys.end, and then it returns the keys. So we are going to check the number of catch. If the keys.length is greater than the num, then we are going to delete the catch. And since we are going to delete the first catch or the oldest catch, so we use the keys 0. And then this is not the end, because sometimes maybe there are 21 catches, and then we have to keep deleting. So we use .then, and then we pass the function, pass itself to this here. So we use the limit num catch, and then we also pass this name again, and then pass the number again. So now this is focusing on limit the dynamic catch. So we have to go to here, right before return. We use these functions by using limit number of catch, and then we pass the dynamic catch. This is the name, and then we pass the size, for example, 2. Now you can see there are 3 items here, and we already go to the favorite page before. So now we can try to go to the about page, and the about page is pushed here, and the favorite page will delete, and this remaining 3 items. In this part, we are going to create a Firestore project. So we go to the Firebase, and then we click on the Add Project, and then we type contact, and then continue, and then we disable the Google Analytics, and then we go to create a project. And then we go to the Firestore, and then we choose the Firestore, and then we create a database. And we start in test mode, which means we can easily develop and access all the data. But for the final products, we need to add the security rules. So we click next, and then enable. And then start the collections, and then we add contacts. And then click next, and then we type name, and then Alan, and then we add another field, and this is phone numbers, and then we type one, two, three, four, five, six, type some random numbers, and then at last we add another field called favorite, and initialize. The value is false, so we click save. Now it will add a random ID for these data, and now we add another document. And then we go to the project settings, and then we go to start a new project. So we click on the web, and then again we type contact. We do not need to have the same name as the Firebase project, but just for convenience. So we register the app. So we copy this code, and we go to the index and paste it right before the other JavaScript files. We also need a link to the Firebase Firestore. So down there, what we are going to initialize our Firebase up on the front end, so we can communicate with the database from here. So we copy this and paste it underneath, and then we name this as Firestore. And we already create a db.js, which we will put all the JavaScript related to the Firestore here. So we go to the index, and then at here, we link this to the db.js. And also, down there, we are going to initialize our Firebase up on the front end, so we can communicate with the database from here. So we store the Firebase.firestore in the constant db. So now we going to let the constant db is equal to Firebase.firestore. What we need to do now is to get the reference to these models and also the contact form. So we go to the db.js and we go to create a constant, and this is equal to document.querySelector, and the form is under the div of add contact, so we can use .add contact form, and then we go to the db.js and we create a constant add contact modal is equal to document.querySelector. And then if we go to the index, we can see the ID is add contact modals. So we back to the db.js and give a hashtag add contact modals. Then we use contact form.add event listeners. And then we want to listen the submit event. And the first thing is we need to prevent the default actions, since the default actions of a form when submit is to refresh the page, and which we don't want to do so. So we need to type event.prevent default, and then we construct an object which represents a new contact. So we create a constant contact, and these have three different properties, which is name, phone, and the favorite. And since we have the contact form here, and the contact form has the name, phone, so we can use this to get the values. So we back to the db.js and we can get the name by using contact form .name .values, and phone is contact form .phone .value, and we initialize the favorite is false. So now we can use the db.collection and then contacts and then .add. We add the contact and then .then. After we add the contact, there are two things we want to do, and the first is we reset the form, and the other is to close the models. So the first thing is contact form.reset. To close the model, we need to create an instance equal to m.model.getInstance, and then we get the model add contact model, which we already created here, and then we use instance.close. And then if you remember, inside the models there is a paragraph with a class error which used to display the error. So we go to clear the error if actually there's no error. So we use contact form .querySelector and then .error .text content equal to empty string. and then contact form dot query selector dot error dot test content is equal to the error dot message. To open the modal, we need to add the modal trigger at the class of the buttons. So we need to go to the index.html and we go to the fixed action button. And then we also have to add the link here. And since the ID is add contact modal, so we have to use this ID as the link. So we back to the floating action buttons and paste the ID here. And then we go to delete the cache and refresh the page. And then we click on the button, it will pop up the form. Now we are going to add the name like John and then type some random number and then press add. And it will close the modals. And there is nothing happen here because we haven't manipulated the DOM. But when we go to the Firebase, and you should see there should be a new data there. So we go to the Firestore, and now there are 3 data, and this is the John that we just add. To do the real-time changes, we need to comment the fetch event listener, since we don't want to catch our different data requests. In this lecture, we just want to make our app to get the real-time data. We will back to the offline function later. So we comment this, and then we go to the db.js, and then we type db.collection, and inside here we put context. The onSnapshot method is setting up a real-time listener to the context. When there is a change, it will send back to use. So now we can see the changes by using the console.log snapshot.changes. And now if we back to the web and we check out the console, we go to the applications and we move the site data, and then we refresh the app. Now you see that from the db.js there are an array. There are 3 data with the type added, which means there are 3 data is added since our last snapshot. So if we try to add another data, such as Amy, and then we type some numbers and then press add, now you see there is just 1 because there is just 1 data is added since our snapshot. And if we go to our Firebase and then we go to delete the document, and then we go back to the website and see the console, you can see the type is removed. And if we go to cycling through the changes, so we back to the db.js, and instead of using console.log, we are going to use the snapshot.changes for each, and then change, and then console.log change. Now you can see this displayed one by one. We can also display the doc by using change.doc.data and also the change.doc.id. Now you can see the change, the document, including the favorite name and also the phone, and also the document ID. You can see that Alan is N41PT. So if you go to this N41PT, you will see the Alan is here. So at last, we want to do different things by different change type. So at here we delete this one, and then we set if change.type is triple equal to add, then we console.log the change.id is added, and then if the type is removed, then we will console.log the document ID is removed. So now if we delete Alan, then you can see the ID is removed. If we now go to add back the Alan, you can see the ID is added, and which is here. After we get the updates from the Firestore, we are going to output our data from the database to the DOM, and we are going to create a render contact functions. And this takes two arguments, and the first argument is the data we want to output, and which is change dot data. And the second argument is the ID of the document, because we are going to link the ID of the document to the template. So we put the change .ID, and this is because in the future, when we delete or edit the document, we can query based on this ID. So every time we get a new document and we want to add to the DOM, and we will call these render contact functions. And since we are going to add the list items here, so we are going to the materializecss and go to the collections, and then we copy these list items, and then we go to the index, and then we try to place this under the context another list. So we save it. Now we can see this template, and now we are going to edit this template. First, we are going to delete this folder icon, and then we add the name, and then we also change the class as name, and we type it as Alan. And the other is we delete this and we change this to phone number, and then we copy this span and paste it here, and then we change this to phone, and we also type some random number as the phone number. Now we can see some changes here. And this one, instead of using a tag, we are using the div as the secondary content because we have more than one icons. So now we can duplicate this twice. And then we have the edit, and then we change this to star border. And the last one is the delete outline, which is a rubbish bin. And then all of these icons, we add a style with cursor pointer, so which have a finger pointing to the icon when the mouse over it. Now you can see when the mouse over the icon, it turned to a pointer. And since we also want this edit button to trigger the model, so we can update the contact. So at here, we also need to add the class as modal trigger. And when we look at the model, we can see the ID is edit contact model. So we copy this and we back to here, and then we type href is equal to edit contact model. So when we click on this pane, this will pop up the edit contact models. So now we already have this template, and in the next lecture, we will put this template inside our render contact functions, so we can render different contacts inside our another list. After we created the template, we are going to continue to create the render contact functions. So we copy this name and go to the UI.js, and then we create a constant render contacts. And in this function, we are going to generate the template and output to the DOM, and we will pass data and the ID to these functions. And first, we are going to create a constant HTML to store the template that we just created in the previous lecture. So we can cut this list item, And then we go back to the UI.js and use the backtick and paste the list item here. We need to update the detail inside this template like phone numbers and the name. So how can we output the variables inside the template string? The way to do this is by using the $sign and then the curly braces. So we put the data.name and also using the data.phone to replace this dummy data. The next thing is we need to output the ID of the document into two different places. The first place is here, the data ID equal to $sign ID. We also need to add this to this div. We place it to the parent of this icon, so we can easily grab the ID and query the database to delete or update document with this ID. And since we want to output to the place called context, so we back to the UI.js file and go to the top of the file and create the constant context is equal to document.querySelector, and then we want to get the div with the class of context, so we put the context here. We want to append this HTML to the div, and since we already store the div to the constant context, and then we can use this context dot inner HTML plus equal the HTML. So this will append this template to the context, this unordered list. So we save. We forget to put a dot here because this is a class name. And also we have to save the index.html file. So we go back to the web page. And now you can see the name and also the different phone numbers rendered here. And we can see there are some mistakes here. We should use data ID equal, just like this one, and save it. Now you can see the data ID displayed at the whole list item and also the div which are around the icons. And we also need to add the style and test align right. And here we also use ternary operator that if this is favorite, then this is star, otherwise this is star border. So at last we save, and this should be a string. Now you cannot see much difference here, but if you change the favorite to true from the Firebase and update, and then if you refresh, now you can see the star is filled rather than empty. If we offline, we cannot access the data, but we also don't want to catch the response by using the Serviceworker, and this might constantly serving the old data from our cache. When we offline, we want to make a request to a new document to the database, and it will pass through the IndexedDB and store there first. So when the internet comes back, it will put back the data to the database. So it will in sync with what we have in the IndexedDB. And likewise, if anything changed in the database when offline, it will also sync back to the IndexedDB. And Firebase makes this process very easy, and it will automatically sync in background for us. So we just need to add a bit of code to enable these functions. So let's jump back to the code and let's implement this offline data behavior. So we go back to the db.js and go to the top and type db.enable persistence .catch, and if error.code is equal failed precondition, then it will console.log multiple tabs opened, and else if error.code is equal an implement, it will console.log browser not support. Now we go to the Serviceworker and uncomment this code. We don't want to run this code if we are making a request with the Google API. So at here we type if event.request.url.index of firestore.googleapis.com. So if the request include this string is triple equal to -1, it should be if the request do not include this string, so we can run this bunch of code. Otherwise, we do not run this. At the db.js, there are some typo here. We should use a E instead of A. So we save again. Now we can see the data here, and we can go to the applications, and we can go to the IndexedDB. And here you can see the collection context is stored here. So now if we make it offline and skip waiting, and then refresh, we can still see the data here even though we already checked offline. In this part, we are going to add the delete functions. First, we are going to uncheck the offline. What we are going to do is to implement the delete function to this rubbish bin, but we will not add the event listener to each of these icons. Instead, we are going to use the event delegation, which means we just attach one event listener to the whole div, which surrounds all the contents. And in the index.html, you can see all the context actually is surrounded by this context, another list. So if we add one event listener to this another list, and if we click anywhere inside this list, it will fire a callback. So let's jump back to our coding, and we go to the db.js, and first we are going to create a contact container. We create a constant contact container is equal to document.querySelector.context, and now we have the wrappers for all the contexts. Then we are going to attach the event listener to this container. So what we are going to do now is to continue to use the contact container.add event listener, and we are going to listen the click event. So at here we just console.log the event.target. So we type e.target and here e.target. Now we try to go back to our website and go to the console. Now you can see the e-target is equal to this icon if we click on the rubbish bin. So what we are going to do now is try to output the test content. So we use the .test content. Now you can see the test content is delete outline, and this one is the star, and this one is edit. So what we need to do is to check if this is delete outline. If the test content is delete outline, then we have to process the delete functions. But how can we know which content we have to delete? If we look at the HTML, you can see we already add the data ID at the div, which wrapped all these icons. So what we are going to do is to get the attribute from the parent element. So for example, we can check if the e.target.testContent is equal to delete outline. Then we console.log the e.target.parent element. So after we unregister the service worker and also delete the cache, we click the delete button. You can see it output the parent element, which is the div around the icons. So the element actually is this div. So now we can get the attribute by using .get attribute and then data ID. Now when you click on the rubbish bin, you can see there are different ID pop up here. So now we can use this ID to delete the data from our Firestore. So now instead of console.log, we use constant ID equal to this attribute, and we can to delete the document by using db.connect, db.collections, and type the context here, and we already grabbed the ID, so we use .id.delete. So this just remove the document from the Firestore, and the next step is we have to remove the content inside the DOM. So on the top at here, instead of console.log the document ID is removed, we are going to add another function which is remove contact, and this time we also need to pass the ID, but we do not need to pass the data. So we back to the UI.js, and then we create the function constant remove contact is equal to, we pass the ID here, and then we are going to look for the cast.contact. So now we have to add the contact cast to our list items. So we can grab the contact. So we use constant contact is equal to document.querySelector and then .contact. And since this is a attribute selector, so we need to use the square bracket. Data ID is equal to $. And since we are going to use a template string, so we have to use the backtick instead of the single quote. So after we get the contact, we use contact.remove. So we go to the applications, we unregister the service worker and also delete the site data, and then refresh. So if we press the delete button, it will delete elements, and you can see inside the Firestore we also just have two data here. So we try to make it offline, and then we can delete Amy, and you can see at here we still have two documents because the app is offline. So now we try to uncheck the offline, and now you can see the document is deleted automatically and just have the Peter here. So this is in sync with our web app. In this part, we are going to implement the edit contact. So inside the db.js, we have to get the value from the list item when click edit. So here, since we already know the test context is added, so we have to go to check if the test content is equal to added. And then we also use this to grab the ID, and then the contact is equal to document.querySelector, and then use backtick contact. Data ID is equal to ID, and then since the name is inside the span with the cast name and the phone is inside this span with the cast phone, so here we can get the name by using contact.querySelector and then .name.inner HTML, and then we do the similar things for the phone. So we try to log out the name and also the phone. Now we go to the website, and when we click on the edit, we can see the Peter and also his phone. So we want to put this inside our edit contact model so the user can edit here. So now we can delete this, and then we use the edit form, but we haven't added the edit form. We need to get the reference for the edit form and also the edit model. So we copy this and duplicate, and we use edit form, and here we change this to edit contact. Since if you look at the index.html, you see this is edit contact. So we get the form which is inside the edit contact, and we change this to edit contact model, and then we also change this to edit contact model. So now we can use the edit form. So edit form dot name dot value is equal to the name, and the edit form dot phone dot value is equal to the phone. So we unregister the Serviceworker and also clear the data site. So we refresh and go to edit. Now you see the values that we get from the list already put inside the form, so the user can add this directly here. And also we have to let the update ID is equal to null, and we want to make this global because this ID is getting from the contact list, but we will use this inside the edit form, and we already created the contact form which has the add event listener. So we can copy this and use this and make some changes to become the edit form. So we change this to edit form because actually the edit form and the contact form has a very similar functions. The only difference is this time we do not want to add a new contact. Instead, we are going to update the original contact. So now we continue to replace the contact form with the edit form. And since we will not initialize the favorite, so we have to delete this one. And also we have to use the edit contact model. And also we do not need to add the new contact, update ID and dot update contact. Inside the condition of checking the test context is equal to edit, we have to replace this with update ID because we need this when we are going to update the Firestore. Because if you look at here, we need the update ID, but here we forgot to use the update ID. So we have to change this to update ID. Now if we click on the edit and we change this to Samuel and click update, now you can see the name already changed to Samuel. And in the next part, we will add the toggle favorite and also update the contact list. In this part, we are going to toggle the favorite. So if the original is favorite, then we want to set it to the unfavorite and vice versa. So we go to the db.js, and inside this contact container, we are going to check the target text content. So again, we copy this. If the text content is equal to star border, which means it hasn't selected as favorite, so we are going to set it as favorite. So we also need to get the ID, so we copy this and paste it here, and then we set the content is equal to favorite true, because we just need to update the properties favorite, so we do not need to add the name and phone's properties. So we use db.collections and contacts dot id dot update contact, And then we duplicate this one. And if the text content is equal to star, then we want to set this as false. And here we want to check if the change.type is modified. If this is modified, we want to update the contact. We also need to pass the data and also the ID. So now we are going to create these functions. So we go to UI.js. We create a constant update contact is equal to data ID, and then we also need to get the contact, and then we need to change the data, and we need to change the text inside the contact. So we use contact query selector, and we have the class of name. If you remember, we have the class of name and class of phone, and then we use .inner HTML is equal to data.name, and then we also need to change the phone, which is data.phone, and then contact.query selector, or and then .material icon, and then we pass the index 1.inner HTML equal to, we will check the data.favorite. If this is true, then we are going to set it as a star. Otherwise, we set it as a star border, which is a empty star. I just found there is a problem that we should not use inner HTML here. We should use text content. And also there's a spelling mistake. So we should use border, not border. So now we go to unregister the service worker and also clear the site data and then refresh. Now this time the favorite is true, and when we click on the star again, you can see the favorite is false and it already changed to a empty star here. In this part, we are going to render the favorite page, and as the favorite page actually is very similar to the index page, so we are going to duplicate the index page, and then we put it inside the pages, and then we delete the favorite page at here, and also we name it as favorite, and we go to the favorite and also change this to favorite. So when we click on the favorite, it will also load this data, but the title is favorite. As you can see, this contact is not a favorite contact, but also displayed here. So we have to make some changes at the db.js, and we are going to check whether this page is favorite page or index page. And we are going to check if window.location.pathname is equal to slash, or the window.location pathname is equal to index.html. Then we will render the context. And then if the path name is equal to pages and then favorite, and we will just render if the data favorite is true. So we use data favorite. If this is true, we will render the contact. Otherwise, we will not render the contact. So we unregister the service worker and also clear the cache. And then we refresh the index page. Now we go to the favorite. You can see there's no contact here. However, if we back to the contact page and then we click favorite, this will show the favorite contact here. We can also add some new contact to demonstrate that only those favorites is added. in the favorite page. So again, we type some random number. Now we go to the favorite page. You can see it just shows Samuel here. And if we click more favorite, for example, we click Amy, and now we go to the favorite page. You can see Amy is also shown here, but Alan will not be displayed here.